A quadratic equation. Quadratic means to the power of 2, like a square. That's what that quad means, not 4. And this is the special form now. We had our trinomial of our 3 terms. Now we have all of that equals 0. And that's what we call now the standard form, where a, b, and c are constants, and a is not 0. So in the beginning, this is going to be just 1, so it'll be invisible. So it'll be x squared plus something, some number x plus some constant. So this is what we want. That's called standard form. And we have this really useful thing. Standard form helps us to actually work out what the answers are, and there can be, and there often are more than one answer for x in these equations. So we can use the null factor law, and that states that if the product of two numbers is 0, then either or both of those two numbers is 0. So if we got here a times b is 0, then if either a or b is 0, it will make the other 0 because we're multiplying them. They can both be 0. So when we were in the last chapter multiplying binomials like x plus 1 times x minus 3, if we then put that into this form, if the product of those equals 0, then x plus 1 equals 0, and we can use our algebra to figure out that x is equal to negative 1, or x is equal to 3, because x minus 3 equals 0, and we add 3 to both sides. So there's actually two answers. So x plus 1 and x minus 3 are the linear factors of this, which yields a product of that trinomial. And we can figure out what x is in both of those different circumstances, and you can see here that it's two different answers. They both work because either one of them will make one of these products 0 and make that equation true. Let me show you. So write these quadratic equations in standard form. So once again, standard form is this. Something, 1, 2, 3, x squared, not 0, plus something x, 1, 2, 3, plus some constant equals 0. So we're going to start with our x squared, and over here on the other side of the equal sign we have 2x plus 7. So we're going to subtract 2x from both sides, and we're going to subtract 7 from both sides, and that gets us x squared minus 2x minus 7 equals 0. And that's put that in standard form, and we can do something with it. Now for this one, we want to actually expand. 2 times 3 times x is 6 x's. And then we've got a positive 5 on the other side, so we're going to subtract 5, and all that equals to 0. That is now in standard form. And now we've got a negative 3x squared on the other side, and we know that the x squared we want to be at the front. So if we add 3x squared to both sides, we can just keep everything that's over there, and we're left with 0 on the other side, and hashtag everybody's winning. So now we're going to substitute the given value in the equation and say whether or not it's the solution. If it is the solution, whatever we work out will be equal to 0. So now we have, if x equals 2, we'll square it, put 2 in there, minus, that's a 6, equals 0. 2 squared is 4, plus 2 minus 6, order of operations 6 minus 6, yes. So that means that x equals 2 is a solution to that equation. And now, if x is going to be negative 4, we have to be careful here. So 2 times negative 4 squared plus 5 times negative 4 minus 3 is going to equal 0. So we have 2 times negative 4 squared. So negative 4 times negative 4 is 16. Plus 5 times negative 4 is negative 20. So we're just going to subtract 20. 2 times 16 is 32. I think it's pretty obvious at this point that there's no way that's going to equal 0. So 9 does not equal 0. So sorry, Tennessee, that is not an answer. So now we use the null factor to solve these equations. Remember that either x, here's one factor, equals 0. That's done. And that would make everything else equal 0 because we're multiplying it. Or x plus 2 equals 0. In which case, if we subtract 2 from both sides, x equals negative 2. So what we're saying is there are two answers here. X equals 0, and if x is 0, that's going to make that equal 0, because 0 plus 2 is 2, but 2 times 0 is 0. That's going to make that true. And if x is negative 2, then negative 2 plus 2 is going to be same as 2 minus 2, which is 0. And whatever we multiply, in this case negative 2, to that is going to be 0. So that makes that true. So the same logic that this one, x minus 1 equals 0, or this one, x plus 5 equals 0. So x minus 1, add 1 to both sides is 1, or x equals negative 5. And if you plug them in, they will make either one or the other into 0, which makes the null factor law work because either a or b is 0, and that makes that equation, that solves that equation. There's two possible answers. Now this one is slightly more complex, but it's still Year 7 algebra. 2x minus 1 will make that equal to 0, or the other binomial, 5x plus 3 equals 0. So 2x equals 1 because we add 1 to both sides. X equals 1/2 because we divide by 2. That's one answer. Or, let's see, 5x is equal to negative 3. Divide by 5, negative 3 over 5. Those are the two possible answers. You can check by substitution, but I promise you it works.